Hello, friends, and welcome to Leadership Happy Hour. I'm Chip Lutz, unconventional leader, and today I am super stoked because I've got a really good friend on with me today, Chris Clarke-Epstein. What's cool about Chris is that she's really well respected in the speaking world, but I really respect her as, I hate the term thought leader, but she just, every time I talk to her, she shares something with me that kind of like blows my mind. I leave and I think, man, that was really profound. Like, I, for the most part, operate on an 8th grade level, but Chris, she takes me at least to, junior, senior level.
You did tell me this is recorded, right?
It is. So welcome, Chris. Cheers to you.
Thanks
for joining us on Leadership Happy Hour.
In Skol terms, we'll say Skol to you.
Skol
to us.
Skol and happy Cinco de Mayo. I'm not drinking.
Scandinavian. I really thought we should add margaritas.
I did too, but I'm a vodka guy. Although the Mexican restaurant I usually go to makes this really good drink called a tornado, where they mix sangria frozen and margarita is like in a swirl. I can drink 3 or 4 of those, and I'm not saying I'm coherent afterwards. I'm just saying that I can do those.
Okay.
So
can you get up from the seat after that?
I can get up from the seat, but usually
okay.
I want to start dancing. That's just
there you go. Of course, you do that quite often. Just like burst in.
I got the moves.
You do without a doubt.
The moves.
Right.
So welcome, and why don't you tell everybody a little about who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Okay. I have been doing this. Well, first of all, let's just establish I started my speaking, training, and consulting business when I was 12. So I've been doing it for about over 30 years. So just let people do the math on that one. And I did, and as fairly typical for many presenters at the beginning, I did quite a few different topics and realized over time that where my real passion was about the whole idea of what happens to people, individuals within organizations when they go through change.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go through lots of change that seems to keep coming, or the pace of change, which is sort of now the definition of life. And
cheers.
And right. And what I realized, Chip, was that a lot of people talked about the mechanics of how you could best present a change, how you should package a change. But a lot of people weren't talking about what was going on in the hearts and the emotions of the individuals in the organization. And leaders have this really terrible habit of spending a lot of time thinking strategically, being visionary, working to lead a legacy, and come up with these wonderful ideas. And then they deliver the decisions as a fait accompli. And in the back of their minds, they're saying to themselves, now anybody with half a brain would understand why we're doing this.
Right.
And the people who didn't have the advantage of thinking strategically and, testing market conditions and having time to sit back and visionary dreams of the future are like, what are we doing? And why are we doing it? And it all feels really capricious. So what I have discovered is that in general, leaders are really bad about delivering context along with the content of their decisions. So I work on the context side, helping leaders understand why that's so critically important.
Right. I've been on the receiving end of that a lot of times.
Yeah. Command and control. That's
exactly. It's like, well, we're doing this, and you're thinking, well, why are we doing this? I thought we were doing something else, but you don't get the why we're not doing this something else. You're just getting the well, we're doing this now.
And be happy about it. And if you're not, then you're not a good team player. So, somehow, you know, if you exhibit some resistance, there's obviously something wrong with you, because of course the leader's like, yeah, because if you had half a brain, you would understand why we're doing this.
Right.
So,
the leader's like, this is a great idea, you know, because it's my idea.
Absolutely. There's a wonderful quote by Dean Ornish, who said, it's not so much that people don't like change, it's they don't like to be changed.
Right.
Yeah. It's by the way, your significant other is probably not the best motivator for personal change. You know, their suggestions of maybe you should exercise a little bit more, or lose a little weight, or be more culturally involved, you know, those kinds of things that significant others will say to each other. Probably a fairly good example of why context is missing in those conversations.
Right. I'll take a cue from Dr. Phil on that, where he was shared. I was watching a show a while ago, and he was like, the reason he's been married 39 years is that he just he knows that he's just going to keep kind of his mouth shut and keep that context in play. So to speak. That he doesn't try to change anything. He just does what his wife wants him to do.
Yeah, there's just too much excess baggage that goes along with that.
This is
so
true. So true.
Exactly. We can clink on that one. Yeah.
Well, what's funny is that I think that like every idea I have is like manna from heaven, and I think it's like that's, you know, and I think this is a great idea. And so when I go out to present it and I get that little bit of resistance, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? This is awesome. This is a great idea, you know. But I like how you mentioned those, you know, resistors, because initially we do look at them as, you know, what's wrong with you? This is God shone a line upon my head. This is an awesome idea.
Right.
You know,
right. I think of sometimes a really good example is thinking about teenagers and suggestions from their parents, or vice versa. Teenagers who come in bursting with a great deal of enthusiasm of, oh, you know, this would be such a great idea. My mom tells the story of my brother who came home. He had a couple really close friends and in high school, and they sort of saw themselves as Grizzly Adams kind of pretenders, you know. They were able to take on the outdoor, and they decided that they were going to, I think it was after their senior year of high school, before they headed off to college, that they should take a boat trip around, I don't know, down the Mississippi or something. They're going to be Tom Sawyer or something.
That's what I was going to say.
And these boys came bursting in the house, and they had it all planned. You know, they had notebooks, they had figured out their route, they had their provisions listed, you know, and then unfortunately ran smack dab into my parents, who did not think this was probably the best idea, because they'd already put the deposit down for the first semester of college, and we're thinking, yeah, you know, they'll be dead and it's non-refundable. So so from the boys' perspective, you know, they thought they had done everything right. They were mature, they had thought it through, they had checked their plans, they had contingency plans, you know, they had everything organized. Unfortunately, my parents thought, yeah, but you don't know enough to come in out of the rain on a Saturday night in Greendale, Wisconsin. Why would we let you going portaging the boundary waters of Minnesota?
Right.
I will tell you the short way to the end of that story is they did go, and the boys had a marvelous time, but they had a disaster at the end that resulted in a plaintive phone call to my parents. Would you please come get us? Because we don't think we can make it all the way back.
And
So,
then,
it was, they both had a piece of right.
it's right, exactly. The parents got to come in at the end and, like, I told you so. I knew this was going to happen. My son came to me pretty much the same way last year. He's like, hey, I think my friend and I, we're going to take a road trip to California next year. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. Well, I'm going to be 18. I can do that. I'm like, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do, but you're on your own.
Yeah. Check the funding source.
Yeah.
Because
don't
he just left the building.
Don't call me. If you call me, I'll be like, no habla inglés. No habla inglés.
And the the parallel in the between those situations and the workplace is the amount of laughter that we just had in telling those stories. Because as a parent, you realize that kids have to do these things.
Right.
And they have to be in situations where they bite off more than they can chew, because that's part of their maturing process.
Right.
And it's our job as parents to provide the safety net. So when it doesn't go the way they went, that, they make the mistake and there's an oops involved, then they know they can count on us for that. Now, the difference in, generally speaking, in the workplace is that there's an implicit, as an employee, if I come to you with this brilliant idea that I want to try, there's an implicit, and it's going to work.
Right.
And oopses in most workplaces are not well understood and well accepted. So I was working with a group yesterday, and we were talking about this very thing, and I shared with them a story, which I will share with you, and you will understand this, Chris, because or Chip, I'm sorry, I was having a moment of looking at myself in the camera. Yeah. Both CH,
like,
what
you understand this,
so
Chris, because I'm you and I'm talking to you.
Yeah, there we go. Anyway, this is one of those stories that I heard years ago. I don't even remember where I first encountered it. And quite frankly, I don't know if it's true or not, but I really don't want to know if it's true or not. So I always tell audiences when I tell it, look, I'm going to tell you this story. If you find out that it's not true, please do not come back and tell me that, because I'm not going to stop telling the story.
Because this is a great story.
Right, because if it isn't true, it ought to be true.
Right.
And the story is about Tom Watson Sr. at IBM in the earlier years of the company. And he had an appointment on his schedule of a younger employee who came in carrying 2 documents. And the young man looked at Tom Watson Sr. and said, thank you so much for giving me the time on your calendar. I've come with a confession and some documentation. He said, I tried something new. It didn't work. And I put together this report, and it has all the lessons learned from this mistake and how I would do it differently if I were to do it again. And I have to be honest, it cost the company $2.5 million. And I also have my letter of resignation, because I cost the company $2.5 million. Right. And as the story goes, Tom Watson Sr. took both of the documents. He looked at the report, put it down on his desk, opened up, looked at the letter of resignation, and handed it back to the young man. And he said, I'm going to accept the report. I look forward to going over it very carefully. I'm sure there's lots to be learned. He said, but I cannot accept your letter of resignation. He said, I just spent $2.5 million training you. And that's why I want it to be true, because that really is the lesson. When you're in change mode, there are going to be oopses. There are going to be mistakes.
Right.
And it's the job of the leader, first of all, to help the person who's stepping out on the limb understand the ramifications, right, and give them boundaries. Like maybe you don't want to run up a $2.5 million mistake first time out of the box, but what's what's the boundary that's acceptable in our culture, and then provide the safety net and the responsibility to mine the mistake for the gems.
Right. Well,
Because,
and that's key.
Oh yeah.
Harnessing that piece of that learning. I mean, that was one of the best gifts I got as a junior sailor in the Navy. I mean, I grew up a youngest of 6 kids, so pretty much everything was my fault. So I transcribed that into the Navy. When anything that would go wrong, I would be like, I probably messed that up. That was probably my fault. And it was my executive officer that pulled me aside and was like, Seaman Lutz, not everything is your fault. And I was like, what? He goes, right. He says, like, not everything's your fault. If you take the blame for everything, then we're not going to learn anything from the process. We need to take a look at what's going on here and figure out what really is the issue. He says, chances are you make a lot of mistakes. It's just the way it is.
Right.
However, you're not responsible for everything. And so, and it really caused me to think, it's like, all right, well, I might have messed this part up here, but what can we learn from the process? And I think that's, an important context for leaders to understand it, give permission in essence for the people to make those mistakes, but then looking at, what can we learn in the mistake that was made. Are you still there? You disappeared from my screen.
Okay, we're back on track.
Oh yeah, you disappeared for a second. I was like,
I'm having difficulty.
You're back on now. We're all good.
Okay.
So you brought up earlier about the whole resistant to change thing. I mean, which as a leader, you throw your idea out there, you think it's really great, and you do have people that are resistant to change. So in your experience, kind of twofold. Why are people resistant? But 2, what can we do to help get them on board with what we're doing? I mean, if they're resistant, are we doing something wrong, or is it just a good thing they're resistant because sometimes we need to hear that our idea is stupid?
Well, I'm not gonna think your idea is stupid, but I just want you to know I can't see you anymore, and I don't know if that means anything.
I can hear you.
I can hear you. Okay. All right. Well, so watching resistance is really important. And when I said I was going to get a prop, the prop I was getting is this book, Beyond the Wall of Resistance, that was written by an NSA colleague of ours, Rick Maurer. This is my Bible when it comes to resistance. And in its simplest form, the question is that leaders need to ask is, why resistance? Where is the resistance coming from? And Rick's theory is that there are 3 levels of resistance. So level 1 resistance comes from lack of understanding. I don't get it. I don't understand what's going on. And this is pretty simple because what they need is more information. So the package that I wrapped the change in didn't contain enough information. So if I give you some more information, that's going to take care of that resistance. Now, what happens is, because that's the easiest thing to do, is just say it a different way, or send another email, or create a video, or do something like that, it becomes the default reaction to any resistance. Your resistance, I will just overwhelm you with information.
Because obviously you didn't understand.
Right. Yeah, let me just
give you
clarify
more.
this. Exactly. And if your beginning premise was anybody with half a brain would understand this, this is a logical conclusion. Let me just tell you more slowly, more loudly, more elaborately. It's all around information.
Because when you talk louder, people understand.
Oh, especially if they are speaking another language.
Right. I learned that watching Maury Povich, that the louder you talk, obviously the more people are going to listen.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And be happy about it.
Exactly.
So what Rick says is basically it's the job of the leader to go beyond level 1 to do the analysis, because this is it's just like a diagnosis from a doctor. I have to have the right diagnosis before I know what prescription to write. So there's level 2 resistance. How clever. This is, instead of I don't get it, this is I don't like it. You know, I don't, why can't we just do it the way we used to do it? So generally what you need to be talking about there is help the individuals understand what's the urgency behind this change. So if I don't, one of the examples I use quite often is phone systems. People in organizations, you know, will quit because there's a new phone system. And you think, for heaven's sakes, it's a phone. Somehow you get a dial tone and you push buttons, or you speak a number and then you talk and then you hang up. That's all it is. It's just some variation of that. So if I like the phone system we have, I don't see the need. So the fact that the phone system that we have is being discontinued by the manufacturer, so we can't upgrade it. We can't have it. There isn't any service. It's like, you know, Windows, what is it? Windows 7 that isn't going to be serviced anymore by Microsoft. You know, we have to upgrade the operating system. But if I don't know that piece of it, then I have no sense of urgency. So level 1 resistance, I don't understand, needs more information. Level 2 is I don't like it. I need to understand the why behind it, and especially around the level of urgency. Cleverly, I bet you can figure this out. There's a level 3. And level 3, my favorite is I don't like you. You know, so
that's the story of my life.
Yeah, well, don't take it personally at this moment. I was a little too much emphasis. But the idea there is, this is all about trust. I don't trust you. So you can talk till you're blue in the face, but I don't trust your motives. I don't trust what you're telling me on a strictly informational level. There's not trust.
Right.
And the only way that you can get rid of level 3 resistance is to rebuild the trust. And what happens, of course, you got level 3, and what you're doing is giving more information. All you're going to get is frustrated.
Right.
And I don't.
You still there? I think I'm still recording. You'll come back on, and I can't hear you anymore. There you are.
You're sounding like a spring every once in a while.
Oh, well, you're clear on my end. So you disappeared for a minute, but now you're back.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
So go back. You were talking about the trust aspect.
Right. So I think this was profound enough that people will see it and remember it. And now you've disappeared again. Oh, don't you love technology? Yep. Anyway, let me just see. I'm laughing at a few comments. So give me some signal, Chip, if we're
good. We're recording.
Okay, good. So what happened was there was an extended exchange between Ted Cruz, and he walked over to the rope line to talk to somebody before a rally. And I think he got a bit ambushed, that as he walked over, this man held up a Trump sign. And he engaged the man in what he thought was dialogue. And he was giving level 1 information, trying to convince the man that he should switch his allegiance and vote for him. This was right before the Indiana primary. And it was very obvious to me that Cruz was operating, that this was a level 1 resistance.
Right.
And I was at a level 3. And they could have stood there and talked till the end of time, and nothing was ever gonna happen, because they were operating at these different levels. Now, the thing that I thought was really interesting, and that I thought has meaning for us in whatever work that we do, is who do we surround ourselves with? Because sometimes when you have a high level of emotional involvement with a change that you're proposing, your ability to see clearly the dynamics of what's going on is quite limited.
Right.
And what really needed to happen in that situation was one of Cruz's entourage needed to come over and say, Senator, as nice as it is to talk to this gentleman, we have a whole room full of people waiting for you.
Right.
Take him off to break it, because it was never going to get resolved in that situation. And so leaders need to have relationships with the people around them to say, if I have lost the ability to correctly and accurately analyze the dynamics of what's going on, I need you to help me break a cycle that I've gotten myself in. So a leadership team is really crucial for successful change.
Oh, I agree with that. Absolutely. The more people, the better the ideas, or the more ideas. Maybe not always the better ideas, but you can vet through some of those.
Right. And if you're at the I don't like you, I may like the other person a little bit better.
Right.
So
and I think that I like that because a lot of times, like for me, there are people that I just inherently, I meet them, I don't like them. To make a difference, how great the idea is, I'm gonna volley against it, just because I like to argue.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in that kind of position as a leader, I mean, what are some things you can do that you've seen that have worked to build trust? Because it's a hard thing, because people, like I think you inferred to earlier, that people aren't really resistant to change. That sometimes they're resistant from all the changes that are happening, and that that they got the whole communication piece you're hitting on is like they didn't realize that we stopped doing this and now we're doing this, and they're thinking, well, what happened over here? And we haven't done a really good job of telling them, well, that's not really working. We're going to try this over here.
Right.
And so if some of that's gone away and we need to rebuild that trust, I mean, what are some things you've seen that work?
Well, there's a couple things, and in this case, because we're looking at it from the leadership, so let me just make one comment, and then I'll come back to this, because if you started the scenario setting it up, I just had a reaction to this person that not based really on anything. I just came to the conclusion that I don't like them.
Right.
I'm not willing to like them. I'm not willing to trust them, and it may be because they remind me of my third grade teacher who failed me, and I don't like them because of that. Or they remind me of my first ex-spouse, and I don't like them because of that.
Right.
Or the sound of their voice makes the hair on the back of my, it's for any reasons that have nothing to do with them, honestly.
Uh-huh.
So the first thing, since we're all in this together, is if I'm having that kind of reaction, I have to be emotionally mature enough to say, wait a minute, I am not giving this person a fair shake. And quite frankly, if this is a working relationship between you and I, hopefully I have enough chutzpah, as my Jewish mother-in-law used to say, to come to you and you say, Chip, I gotta tell you, it's really the haircut. That's what it is, because my ex-husband is retired military, and that's the haircut that he got, and I see you, and that's exactly what I see. So help, just understand that I need to, I'm working on that myself. Now, this is obviously, you have to have a relationship to have this kind of a conversation,
right?
But I bear responsibility of admitting to that and letting you in on it, because if I don't let you know that I'm reacting irrationally, then you're going to go down a whole path of believing stuff about me, which jeopardizes my ultimate relationship and situation within the organization. Okay, we're veering over into therapy here. So, which sometimes you have to recognize people don't need training; they need therapy. So,
right,
it's an element of that. But let me go back to your main question.
To that.
Yeah, that's why we got this. So here's a couple strategies that leaders can use. One is, unfortunately, in most organizations, when there's a project that's being worked on or a new product that's being launched, some sort of change initiative, there's not a postmortem that is built into the process, where either you get to the end, or sometimes if it's a really long project, that you plan it at periodic elements where you stop and say, okay, let's sit down, let's talk about what kinds of things have gone really well and what lessons do we take from those, and what things have been oopses and didn't go the way we thought, and what lessons have we learned from those, and then how do we take the lessons from the good things and the lessons from the not so good things and wrap them into what happens next or what continues on.
Right.
And that kind of regular analysis because the worst thing is when there are mistakes that are not discussed and they're hidden, because then you're just planting time bombs that are going to cause problems in the future. So one thing that a leader can do is be insistent, and those conversations take place in a safe environment. There's no repercussions on that. Now, that being said, I do need to distinguish between a unique oops and a repeated oops. Repeated oopses are just stupid, and I'm not talking about
grounds for flogging.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what we're talking about. Well, we literally went in a different direction, and it didn't work, and we learned stuff, and this is why it wasn't a good direction. This is how we would tweak it for the next time. So that discussion period, when we do those, there's no recrimination. We're not pointing fingers. We're together to learn. So that's a formal thing. An informal thing for leadership behavior is this is a perfect line. What two lines for a week? I think if somebody reports to you every week, you should be having a conversation that covers these two things. What are some of the barriers you encounter to success this week? Because it's my job as a leader to remove barriers. It's not my job to do what you're supposed to do. But if you've run up against an organizational brick wall or not having the right resources, those kinds of barriers, I need to know that, because that is work I'm supposed to be doing.
That's good. So, I like that.
Yeah. So that one is, what barriers have you run into this week? And then what lessons have you learned this week? Again, from the things that went really well and the things that didn't go so well. Because I'm telling you, I'm expecting out of you that you are just a little continuous learning machine.
Right.
And that's how you're going to get better. And if you get better and your team members I'm asking them the same questions and they're getting better, that means the team is getting smarter. So that's an informal, I call that conversational feedback discussions.
I like that.
It's not a big review. It's not a big deal. But the other thing is consistency, and consistency leads to the trust. If you're my leader and I know that you're going to be asking me those questions, when I come to you with a problem, I know you're going to say to me, well, what lessons have you learned? Or what was the barrier? So when I come to you, I know I have to have that information. And that makes us smarter as we're going forward. Here's another strategy for leaders to think about change. So let's go back to, you got this really brilliant, and I use the we because you're the one that I'm talking to. We have got this wonderful idea. Yeah, that would be the air quotes.
Air quotes.
Them. It's close to them. We have this really great idea. And so we're going to launch the idea, and we bring, large groups of employees or our team together, and we've got the speech all prepared with the talking points and PowerPoint up on the screen, and maybe we have a video, and we've got mugs that have the initials of the initiative.
We got mugs.
Yeah, well, because we got to have
the cornerstone of any great change initiative, mugs.
Well, you got it. So we got all that stuff, and we're doing the big launch, and over at the back table, Chip and Chris are sitting at the back table next to each other, and Chip has been with the organization for a couple of years, and he's seen it all, and Chris is new. And she's listening to this first time. She's got her mug. She's like, I'm now part of the real team. So, because I got a mug, and I'm getting excited. And it's obvious body language. You can tell when people are catching the fever. And so I'm doing that. And all of a sudden, Chip leans over and says, "Hey, Chris, settle down. We've all heard this before. And if you just keep your mouth shut and your head down, this too shall pass." And I look at Chip and I'm like, what? I thought this was really cool. We got mugs. This is really good. Chip says, come to my office and I will show you a cabinet full of mugs that I have gotten for the last 10 change initiatives, and you won't have heard of any of them. Because if you just let them go their merry way, it'll disappear. It's the change du jour programs. And leaders, when they do these things, and in my opinion, they do this far too often. Somebody on the leadership team went on vacation, bought a book in the airport gift shop, read it on the beach, comes back, says, we are going from good to great. We're going to make it all stick. We are going to get beyond the wall.
Somebody stole my cheese.
Yeah, and they do all of that stuff, and then they let it fade away. And so what leaders do is they build cynics in their own organization.
Right.
And so just like with your kids, don't tell your kids, if you don't sit quietly at the table, we're leaving the restaurant 27 times and never leave the restaurant. You aren't doing the consistency kind of things. So leaders need to look at their own behavior. And I believe
no, we're good. You said leaders need to, and you started.
Oh, okay.
What was the last part? Leaders need to what?
Need to monitor their own behavior, because you can't say we're doing this and then we're not doing that anymore. We're doing this. It's the old pick a lane and take something through, and understand that major change initiatives, especially if you're attacking your culture, is somewhere between 7 and 10 years.
That's
And you,
it's a
right, and going in knowing you're going to get off track significantly quite a few times. So you really have to be willing to sustain things.
I like how what you hit on there, that consistency equals or builds trust. I'm a firm believer in that. Even if you're a consistent a-hole, I think that people at least know that what they can expect from you. That I think a lot of times leaders worry about being liked, and being liked is overrated. Being likable is a completely different dynamic. That and I think that's being consistency is part of that. That you don't have to be liked, but if they know that they can trust you, and this is how you always are, this is how you're going to react to things, then they have that foundation in their work life, and they're like, this is what I can expect from Chris, or this is what I can expect from Chip when I bring this to him. I know that Chip will blow off, go off the deep end, but once he calms down, he's good to go. Or Chris is always even keel. She's going to sit back, reflect on it, and then she's going to give me a really profound answer on it. I know what I can expect from that. I really like that consistency piece that that you brought on as far as the whole trust factor on.
Right. And again, thinking of it from a personal level example, think of the times that you have been in restaurants with children at a table who are pushing the limits of their parents' patience. And you hear the parents say, all right, I'm not going to tell you again, settle down. And then 5 minutes later, the kids are doing it again. And the parent says, if you guys don't settle down, we're leaving. This just goes on. I would guess that there are very few people who have ever actually seen a parent or parents stand up anywhere in that process, throw some money on the table and say to the wait person, here, this should cover our order, but we're leaving, and walk out with the kids. And once the kids figure that out, they're never going to take those pronouncements of doom with any kind of credibility, because it doesn't happen. So you explain, and I think the greatest leaders that I have observed explain boundaries and give people enormous freedom inside the boundaries. And because I know how my behavior is going to be judged in that circumstance.
I like that. Evidently, these people haven't been sitting next to me with my 4 kids when we were at a restaurant, because I wouldn't like disrupt my dinner. I would just like pull them up. We would take a little trip to the bathroom. They'd come back recalibrated. Everything was good.
Yeah. Well, when my kids were little, child protection devices in cars were not mandatory, but we had car seats, but no, I mean, when I think back of what they look like, they were probably death traps in and of themselves. But my kids always sat in car seats. And I remember my friends saying, how do you do that? My kids won't sit in them. And I'm thinking, who's driving the car, for heaven's sake? And I would just say, well, it's not a problem. If they would unbuckle themselves or wouldn't get in, I just say, well, the car isn't moving until you're in your car seat. So let me know when you want to go. And I always had a book with me. So I would just sit and read a book, and soon they'd get bored and get in the car seat, and then we go. But the issue is they knew they could count on that. We weren't moving if they weren't in the car seat. So when you introduce a change initiative that is significant enough and important enough and well thought out enough to hang the success or the future successes of an organization, then you better be willing to stick with it. Don't capriciously do the program du jour, because all you will get then from then on is level 3 resistance from people. Why should I stick my neck out for this? Because it's going to go away.
And you'll be just creating, like you said, a culture of cynics, or a group of cynics.
And I got to tell you, I do not pay people for being cynical on my payroll, and I do not spend my money with organizations who pay people who are cynical. And you can pick that up pretty quickly within an organization.
Absolutely. On a personal level, because I know, like, it's like I gotta look at my time here. So if you're the person that's undergoing the change, and you've got to have, like, say, a strategy, personally, to get through it. It's been, whether you're at level 1, level 2, level 3, but you still have to do it because you want to keep your job. Is there something that people can do personally to help themselves persevere through the change? Like, if I was going through and I was having a rough time, what advice would you give me on just like, this is how you're going to power through the pain, Chip? Do this.
Um, I think all the good things that we know around helping ourselves when we're in a stressful situation. Watch how much sleep you're getting. Hang around with the positive people in the group. Don't rub elbows with the cynics, the ones who are contemptible
Right.
about the mug. Use your mug proudly. So pick your.
I still love the mug.
Yeah. Well, it is the perfect model.
I love it.
Exercise if you are in the midst of things, disconnecting and going for a walk. Weather's nice and you can go outside, get some fresh air, change your perspective. One of my best theories is if you have a stack of papers that looks really good and you go for a brisk 10-minute walk somewhere through a building, nobody will ever stop you because they'll assume that you're on your way
do something
to
important.
do something
Absolutely.
really important. But yeah, exactly. So physical, so sleep, good food, watch the caffeine, and all of our team rooms are filled with donuts and coffee and caffeine and sugar. And so say, let's do something different than we normally do and get some, fruit trays or veggie trays and some good dip, but food, all the good things that help you just stay healthier. The more the stress is, the more positive impact you'll get for that. Another suggestion, excuse me, is go back to those resistance levels and figure out which one is what's going on. I just don't understand. For example, you and I, in getting ready for this call, for this time together, you helped me change to a new technology because I haven't used the lab before. And quite frankly, I'm like, can't we just do this on Skype or something, is what I'm thinking. And so my resistance was level 1 resistance because I didn't understand the technology. And so, as you remember, I reached out for more information. So had it been level 2, like I really don't like it, I would have had to ask a different question. I would have said, Chip, explain to me why we're doing this on Blab and not something else. So I have some responsibility for doing that investigation myself and then asking for what I need. Hold
on. Let me stop right there. I'm just glad that we weren't at level 3 where you're just like, I just don't like you, Chip.
Well, and yeah, that would be called get your resume. Because if there is a significant mismatch with a leader, or if you are in an organization where your values don't match, so if you fundamentally don't think the change is right, there may be a time when you have to say, I believe I need to disengage myself from this. My friend Catherine Jeffers had a great expression that she taught me a number of years ago. Sometimes you need to free up your future. And if you truly are at level 3 resistance, that you are operating in an organization, or somebody just had a great comment, which is you can't be engaged or good fit if your values don't match leadership. I could not agree with that more. And then you have some responsibility of saying this isn't working and I need to look for another place. So doing your own evaluation is really important. And then and let me just say this. I wanted to make sure I said it before we said our goodbyes. I have a worksheet that people can use to sort of parse where they or their team is on that, on those levels of resistance, that give ideas of strategies and tools and things that you can use. So if people wanted to send me an email at chris@change101.com, and just ask for the resistance worksheet, I'd be happy to send that to them so they can do a little
little added bonus. You know,
value
added.
Add.
Like I say, I always tell people to change. I mean, basically you have kind of like three options. You can get with it, you can get over it, or you can get out. You know, that's kind of, you know, and which is a little more abrasive way of saying what you were just saying. You were much more eloquent.
Well, but it gets to the heart.
You're much more eloquent than I am,
which is my want.
I was just, you know,
get to the point, right? So here's another evaluative tool that I think is important. In every change, there are things that you control, that you influence, and that you can't control. There are those elements in every change. What happens to most of us is that we focus on the things that we can't control. And that is an ultimate waste of time. And it's like, what is the line about making a silk purse out of a sow's ear? You know, it doesn't end up very good and it irritates the sow. You know, it's something like that. So the first thing you need to do is give yourself permission to write the list. These are all the things that I have no control over. Top leadership are idiots. They made a really bad decision. You know, whatever it is, vent, let it go. But then take that piece of paper that you wrote it on and burn it. Because any time that you spend on that is a waste. Because you have no control over it. The stuff that you can control and that you can influence, that's where you get your action items. And you will find when you do this, there are many more things that you can control and influence than you probably imagine in the beginning.
Yeah, I like that. You know, I like, you know, looking at most stressful things. I mean, what we're talking about is control and predictability. You know, so, and you say a lot of times we're focusing on stuff we can't control, and all we can really control is this right here. So, you know, on the stuff that
right, and you always have to put attitude on the control list, because I always control.
Absolutely. Well, you have given so much awesome value to me today. I mean, I was sitting there tonight thinking about the things that you shared with me. Now, if we were at a regular bar, I would challenge you to do something kind of crazy, but instead, I'm going to ask you a few awesome questions from my Overstuff Would You Rather book. So, I tried to pick stuff that was, all right. Chris Clarke-Epstein, would you rather have a nose piercing with a chain connected to a sparrow, or have a massive one-hair comb-over that winds back and forth on the top of your head?
Is there a third choice?
It's just two. You don't have to pick. It's okay. It's okay.
The comb over, although embarrassing, would not be as painful as the nose piercing. So I'm going.
There you go. Good
one.
deal.
Give me another one.
Good deal. If people want to find you after today, where can they find you, Chris?
Change101.com. Email is chris@change101.com. My Twitter handle is changechris. I'm on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and love to.
You're all over the place. Well, I appreciate you spending time with me today, and with people that are going to hear this afterwards. So you gave a lot of great insights on how people can deal with change. Thanks for your time, and again, thanks for joining on Leadership Happy Hour, everybody. If you want to find me, you can find me at unconventionalleader.com or chip@unconventionalleader.com. Thanks again, Chris. Cheers to you.
Cheers and skull right back at you.
Happy Cinco de Mayo, my friend.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
I'll catch up with you later. Thanks. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.